So in this video, we'll be talking about the z-index property. Now, the concept of z-index is really simple. It's really easy to understand. However, do please pay extra attention to the finer details, especially the ones I'll cover in the second half of this video. Because if you don't pay attention to them, those often are the cause of your errors. So basically what the z-index property does is it basically lets you manipulate which element is in front of which other element, which element will overlap which other element. It works like this: an element that has a larger z-index value will be in front, it will overlap another element that has a smaller index value. For example, let's say I have two dividers, right? Let's say one is red and the other divider is blue. And in this case, the red element has a z-index value of 3 and the blue element has a z-index of 1. And both of these elements are sibling elements, okay? So neither is a parent of the other. In this case, the red element, the one with the larger z-index value, will be in front of the blue element, which has only a z-index of 1. 3 is bigger than 1, right? So the blue element will be behind. As with all things programming, it's much easier for you to actually understand if I actually write code out for you, and then you see how this code looks in the browser. So we'll do that. Let's create two dividers. It's very important, by the way. I'll explain in more detail later, but it's very important that these elements are not parent and child. Otherwise, z-index will not work. So the first divider, let's give it a class of red. Let's give the second divider a class of blue. And for red, let's set the height to 400 pixels. Let's set the width to 400 pixels. Let's set the background color to red. Let's, because I want to align these dividers by default next to each other. So let's set the float value to left. And for blue, let's set the background color to, color to blue. Let's set the float value also to left so they line up. Let's also set the height to 400 and a width to also 400. So right now we have two squares next to each other. This is what it looks like in the browser. Two squares next to each other. The effect I'm going to do with z-index is to move the red square over the blue square, so it partially covers the blue square. So I'll explain why we're doing this in a minute, but let's set both of their positions to relative. Let's set the left value, because we want to move it, meaning the red element, to the right. So let's set the left to 200 pixels. And we want the red to be in front of the blue. So how do you do that? Red's z-index must be larger than blue. So let's set the z-index to 3. Let's set the blue's z-index to 1. And this is what it looks like in the browser. See? Now, the red element, red, partially covers blue. Look how it looks like blue is half gone. It's been partially covered. This is basically what you can use z-index for, to move one element in front of another. Let it overlap another element. However, to get z-index right, you need to please keep 2 points in mind. These points frequently cause you a lot of error if you miss them. First of all, you need to make sure that the position values of the elements you want to play around with, make sure they are not set to static. Now, if you remember the position property, if you don't do anything with it, if you don't set it to anything, it's static by default. In other words, if you want to use z-index for any element, you have to set its position. It can be to relative, it can be to absolute, that's not important. But if you don't set it, or if you for some odd reason want to set it to static, don't know why you do that, but let's see if you did, z-index will not work. So number one, you have to set the position value to something other than static. Now, number two thing you must keep in mind for z-index to work is that the elements, they cannot be parent and child. Okay? You cannot set a child behind a parent. As long as they are parent and child in relationship, z-index will have no effect. Okay? Z-index does not apply if one of them is a parent of the other. So make sure they are sibling elements if you want to use z-index. As I have done both of these things in my example. That's why I set position. That's why I made sure that one element was not inside of the other. Now finally, one interesting point to keep in mind is that z-index, it actually, interestingly enough, it doesn't matter exactly what value you set z-index to, as long as one of them is larger than the other, the larger one will be in front of the smaller one. For example, if I had set the value of red's z-index to 1 billion, and I had set the z-index value of blue to 1, the effect would be the same as if I had set the z-index value of the red one to 4, and I had set the z-index value of the blue to 1. So the fact that I had made, let's pretend, the z-index of the red much larger, it has absolutely no effect. It only cares whether one is larger than the other. It does not care by how much. So anyways, this is a very simple concept, but you do have to pay attention to the finer points that I just mentioned in the second part of the video, because if you don't, they often cause you a lot of headaches and you'll wonder, what the heck, why isn't this working? So do pay attention, review this video a few times, and just play around with it, and I think you'll get it pretty fast. But anyways, this does bring us to the end of the video. Thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know, and I'll see you next time.